comfortable do you feel, particularly if you're a woman, going in for the first time to talk to a financial planner or somebody who can help you to plan your financial life? We're going to figure out what's underneath that and help you feel super comfortable going in today. Your relationship with money matters. I'm Michelle Perkins, and this is the Money and You podcast, where I will be breaking down your relationship with money, offering tough love money tips, and a money dating plan that will focus on lifting the barriers to success to help pave the way for better money practices and increased wealth. It's time to take control to live a limit-free life. It starts today. Hello, and welcome to the Money and You Show. I'm Michelle Perkins, your host, and we love to talk about a variety of money topics, helping to educate you. And all the while, I pay attention to what is your relationship with money? What are the emotions that are coming up? And so we tackle that as well because, as you probably know, if you've ever listened to my show, those emotions are really dictating the decisions we make with money. And so we want to look at both. If you can manage your emotions around money and you can also know the practical aspects of money, you will be unstoppable. And I have someone with me today who is helping people to be unstoppable with money right now in her life and has written an amazing book. And so I'm going to bring in Monica Allen, who is a retired nurse practitioner for the U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs, with more than 3 decades of experience in primary care, urgent care, cardiology, dermatology, and substance abuse. A wife and mother, she's passionate about healthcare and finance and committed to helping other women navigate their personal finances. Monica's kitchen table approach for financial management was born from her personal experience as a teenage mother and the strategies her own mother passed down to her. Monica, welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
I'm so happy to have you. We had a great conversation and you're just a wealth of knowledge. You were in healthcare and now you're talking about finance. So let's just back up a little and find out a little more about your background and what brought you to this point of writing this book.
Sure. I can't hardly start out without starting with the original me, and I'll give it to you in a short synopsis. At age 16, I had a teenage pregnancy, and that was kind of uncommon at that time. At age 18, I lost my father suddenly to a heart attack. And then at age 22, I was going through a divorce that I did not want with baby number 2 on the way. So I always loved numbers, but let's just say this. I started off with the numbers stacked against me.
Wow.
I thought I had made it then when me and my husband got together and we started off with my 2 children, and I thought we had made it. And one night, we can't afford a pizza. We both had college degrees. We thought we'd build a house and we thought we were on top of the world, and I couldn't afford that pizza until the Friday that I got paid. This was on a Wednesday. And I remember going to bed that night and thinking, I thought I had it made. I don't have it made, and I'm going to start reading everything I can on finance. And that's what I did.
Wow, that's quite a story. I'm really curious because I think a lot of us are in funny mental places with money. So you thought you had it made. What was going on that made you feel like you had it made, even though the money in the bank clearly wasn't there?
I think it was that a dream of college and getting that college degree, and then finding somebody that you knew you were going to spend the rest of your life with. And just all those things put together, what I considered the American dream: 2 cars, a house, 2.5 kids.
Yeah.
And I just thought it was all that and a cup of tea. And what I soon found out was, unless you really budget your money and tell your money where to go, it's just going to disappear and you won't know where it went necessarily.
Yeah, that's a lot of the point of the show is to become more conscious of money. Money, for whatever reason, kind of like food, it becomes sort of this unconscious thing. We're habitual creatures and we do things and we don't necessarily have a strong awareness of what we're doing with money often. And it's ironic, really, because it's sort of the lifeblood of everything. It's making everything run, to creating, food for the kids and the house to be there. And yet we spend very little time paying much attention to those particular numbers. And it's, I've been there. I sort of know what it is, but it's a mystery to all of us at some point. And then once you become aware, as I'm sure you did at that point, it changes the game.
Definitely.
Yeah. So what happened from that point?
From that point on, I started reading everything I could, and then I wanted to teach others. But what I realized was that no matter what your salary was, when you get that first paycheck, they sure do take a lot. My first paycheck, I thought there had to have been something wrong because so much was taking out for insurance and different things like that, taxes. What's this FCIA? I didn't know what half of the little terms were.
Right.
But so you see it all taken out, and then you still deposit a big check into your checking, and you start spending it. And especially when you have children, or you just have needs, or you go out to eat because you work so hard, the money just seems to disappear. Mm-hmm. And I started teaching people these classes. I started with Larry Burkett. He was Crown Financial Ministries at that time. And then I went on to Dave Ramsey and taught 50 couples in classes at times over different classes that I taught. And what I found was a lot of people that did turn away from the classes did it for a couple of reasons. And one of them was because they would see all these steps, and step number 8 might be fund my kid's 529 college plan, which is great. But when they couldn't afford a pizza last night and they're living paycheck to paycheck, they could not even see so many steps. So I narrowed it down to 4 steps, that if you do these 4 steps, you are still head and shoulders above other people, and you are grounded to get yourself together, where then you are going to be able to go in and talk to a financial advisor and not feel so lost.
Yeah, that's such a great point, because it is an overwhelming world, the financial world. And, we do tend to feel like there's so many things you need to be doing all at once. And how can you possibly, and again, that's where all the mindset stuff comes in. This is too hard. This is too much. I don't have time. I don't earn enough to do any of it anyway, so why bother? And really just starting on a very small level and understanding a few basics and using those basics and then adding, it's just this process. And I think we feel very much, because it's so taboo to talk about, which is the other reason that I do this show, that, everybody else is doing it better than we are. And so then you just sort of want to crawl in a hole. Right. So, and I think for women, that's been even a bigger problem, that, they're maybe feeling even more insecure about the whole thing. That's changing, but I still feel like that's out there. So tell me a little about if you can, a little about those 4 fundamental pieces that you found are so important.
Yeah. The 4 fundamental pieces are just basically starting to really get the budget, get an emergency fund, and start realizing where your money is going. As women, we control the pulse of the household. We really do, whether we believe it or not, even if we're not the biggest breadwinner. But a lot of times nowadays, women make just as much as their counterpart, their significant other in the house, and or more than that person. But the woman will control the household finances, in that if we are going to go on a Disney vacation this year, or we're going to go camping, if we are going to eat out, or if we are going to make pizzas at home. The woman controls the pulse, and her happiness or dissatisfaction can also control the pulse. And that's why we're in the perfect position to set our families financially free. We really are in the perfect position, and we influence the household so much more than we might realize.
Yeah, that's such a great point and so true. I mean, I see that with most people I know, and which I think is a wonderful advantage for women. I mean, I would feel very uncomfortable if I were not, kind of knowing what was going on. And I find that happens too. And that's not a good position to be in. That's very disempowering. So I love that. Do you find that women are in that position? Do you find that they are kind of operating like the CFO of the household, or do you find they know enough? I mean, is that what you're helping with?
I think that they are the CFO of the household, but they just don't know it. Mm-hmm. And so they may feel like they just don't know where to go and where to turn, but they're already leading the way to do it. And now they just need a touch of guidance to realize what an important job they have and how they can change it for their family. We talked a little bit earlier about me and healthcare, and I'll tell you that healthcare and COVID really took its toll on people in many different ways. And unless you're in a certain occupation, which I was healthcare, it can be the dollar store cash register operator. Unless you're in different positions, you don't really know the toll that it took, but we all know it took a toll. And for healthcare workers, we had finally met our match, because before we would garb up, even with AIDS. I was practicing when AIDS came out. HIV, we knew what to do to protect ourselves pretty quickly. But with COVID, we were protecting ourselves, everything up to our eyes, and still we were dying or bringing that illness home to grandparents that might be watching our kids, and could have potentially kill our own family members. We'd met our match, and so many people left the workforce, not just healthcare workers, many of them they say about 3.5 million women and people left the workforce just to care for those school-age kids that were no longer going to be able to go to school. And we didn't want to leave them with grandparents in a lot of cases, because they said that, the illness would kill the grandparents. Mm-hmm. So when we left the workforce, they say still almost 2 million have not returned to the workforce. And if you go through a store or to a restaurant, you'll see a lot of the stores are not stocked. There's not enough servers. They just have not returned to the workforce. And there's no way that they could have gotten their finances in order in such short notice. And so that's what I'm trying to help them do, is just take it by the reins, backtrack a little bit, and get things organized.
Mm-hmm. I love that. And I love the fact that you have personal experience and experience with other people you've coached to understand that you can do a restart on this. I think that's another belief around money is, I'm bad with money. So they feel almost like there's no hope. And so, money's like anything else. You learn more. You do more, and you've got to take the actions, and sometimes that takes a bit of courage, and seriously, it always takes a little discipline, frankly, but I think it's such a good message that at any point in life, you can take the bull by the horns with respect to this if you have some advice and some tips, and that's what you're providing people, which I think is so important. And it is different. If you leave the workforce, obviously you're in a different financial situation, and you have to adjust everything to accommodate that. Maybe you've gone from 2 salaries to 1 salary or whatever, but planning, and you talk about planning. People sometimes are reluctant to plan with their money. Maybe they can't, they want to plan for something, but it feels so far away or so challenging that they just don't even want to go there in their mind. Another poor emotional decision, even if you don't know how you might get there, it is important to plan for what you want. So what is your, take on planning, and why is that so important?
I think planning, and here's what I tell people, because they hate the word budget. It's like a cuss word. Yeah. And so they really hate the word budget because somebody's not going to get what they want. At least they feel that way. But a lot of times we're not getting what we want anyway, because we just have racked up credit card debt, which robs our joy. Mm-hmm. So planning to me is this. You don't have to say that you're not going to eat out, but I want you to write it all down on paper, what you're doing with your money. And when you write it all down on paper and you see that you're spending $700 a month eating out, we had a family of 6. So, that could easily happen. And it doesn't even have to be 5-star restaurants now with inflation. But you're spending that much on retirement, eating out, and you're putting $150 a month in retirement, then you are looking at it on paper and you're saying you might be eating your retirement. And when you retire, your kids are not going to want to support you. They're going to be strapped, just like you feel you are now. So I just say, wake up by writing it down and see where it's going and then decide. Because many people, they get to different stages of life and they're like, I want to retire when I'm 52, or I definitely want to leave when I'm age 60. Well, if you don't plan for that, then it's never going to happen. And if it's a dream and you're in your 30s, you have plenty of time to plan for it. You just have to realize what you need and what you have to put away so that you never see it. And let that compound, and you're going to be in great shape.
Yeah. And of course, with that idea, starting immediately is the best time to start, because that compounding is all dependent on time. And so, yeah, super important. I love that. And I love the fact that, again, it takes some discipline to sit down and plan, but the benefits are just enormous. So, again, it seems to always have a comparison with food. I mean, meal planning is also a great way if you're trying to control what you're eating and how you're eating. And so it's very similar. We seem to do it more readily with other things. And I do think that's partly because there's so many emotions that come up around money. You said you'd worked with couples. That had to be really interesting, because when I've worked with couples, there's a lot of emotional stuff that comes up, a lot of disagreements and other things. And so understanding how each person is emotionally with money is super important. Do you have any stories on that one?
I have a great example of one of the couples. I can name many of them, but this one's in the book. Stories help it stick in your mind. So there was a couple that came into the class, and this class had 50 couples in it. So it was quite a busy class, but they came in that they were going to get their finances in order so they could get a divorce. That's smart to do, because divorce does not make anybody richer. Trust me. So he wanted golf clubs and she wanted shoes. That was their vices. Okay. And they were bickering back and forth. Well, you're not going to get clubs. You're not going to buy any more golf clubs. And he's like, well, I have fun not getting any shoes. They ended up leaving the first group early. But as they came back and then I worked with them individually, what happened was we realized they had a good income, but we just started breaking down their bills. And they had a little bit of money that they can tuck in her shoe fund and his golf club fund, which made them satisfied. They couldn't get exactly what they wanted as quick as they wanted, but they were satisfied. Yeah. And then as they freed up money and got out of debt and started realizing, hey, this could work, they ended up, in the end, saving their marriage.
Wow.
So finances, it's a big cause of divorce.
Yes.
And people don't want to talk about that. They don't want to talk about sex. There's a few things they don't want to talk about that should be talked about. And they ended up saving their marriage. And I smile whenever I think of them. They live in Florida now, but
I love that. That is a great story. Yeah. And you're right. I mean, that relationship with money is complicated enough, but then you bring in 2 relationships with money, and it's actually 4 people in that marriage. It's like, it becomes very interesting, the things that are going on. The beliefs people have are fascinating around money. I want to jump back into healthcare for just a minute, because when we first talked, I really connected with you on that, because I'm taking care of my parents and I'm really experiencing the healthcare system in a very new way. So, are there some things that because obviously healthcare costs can be enormous, and they can really, how do you plan for that? Or is that part of the retirement planning? I mean, what would you help people with on that score?
It definitely is. I was lucky in that when I left the VA, I had been there 30 years. I was able to take my health insurance with me. I have to pay for it, but I was able to take that health insurance with me for the rest of my life. Health insurance, that's $1 million thing right there. because a lot of people, they cannot take their health insurance with them. And if you can't, you're going to do Medicare A and B and probably work until you're age 65 when you're eligible for it. Mm-hmm. Sometimes, depending on your income, Medicare A and B can be quite costly.
Right.
At the lower end of the scale of income, it's not as bad. But I recommend that you find a good D plan, because some of the D plans, and there are brokers out there that can help you with this, some of them will cover certain cancer treatments, which that's a money pit right there. Mm-hmm. And you want to be able to get, if you do get the bad diagnosis of cancer, you want to be able to get those meds. Some of them cover them and some of them won't. And so you will get different meds based on your Part D coverage. Some people can spend $1,000 a month for them and their spouse in retirement for health care.
Right.
It's overwhelming, but if you don't have it, it's overwhelming also.
Yeah, exactly. Wow, that's really great advice. And Medicare, again, all of these are little worlds that you have to learn. You know, I'm almost 65, but not yet. And so I didn't know it very well, but my parents have it. And so I've had to sort of learn it. I haven't really had time to dig in the way I want, because I feel like I'm probably losing out somewhere, you know. So I think it's important, you know, along with having a financial advisor, to have people who are knowledgeable about all of these things. Somebody pointed me toward an attorney actually in North Carolina who specializes in helping people with Medicare and Social Security, because there's a lot we don't know. And you know, it's important. Those resources are out there, but sometimes they're not as obvious as others.
And they're not always costly. Some people think that there's a big cost with them, but the brokers that help you do different plans, there's not really a cost to them, and they'll plug in all your information and then steer you where to go. And we all need somebody that specializes in it in order to be able to understand it.
Yeah. And to that point, let's go back to the retirement. And, you know, part of why you wrote your book was to help people get themselves in a position where they felt knowledgeable enough and, you know, confident enough to go and sit down with a financial planner. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So what is it, you know, what's the advantage there? Why do you want them to be able to do that?
Well, we can do it on our own. And I was actually thinking about doing it on my own, but the time required to do it on your own, and to, especially if you're investing in the market or doing anything with rollover money from your 401k plan that you might have had at work, if you're lucky to have one of those, or any pension, it's also very deep work. And so it depends on how much time you have. I didn't have the time to do mine. So what I did was I interviewed a lot of different investment brokers and talked to even some insurance people. And I found a firm that actually does the taxes, takes care of my rollover and my husband's rollover 401ks. And they have an attorney on board. They have a Medicare specialist on board. They have lawyers for estate planning. And so I got it all under one roof. And if anything happens to me and my husband, the kids will go to this firm to be told, here's what it is.
Wow, that is really interesting. That sounds amazing. And
it is.
You know, it's a little bit of a job to find, you know, your people, your advisors. How did you find such a comprehensive group? Were they referred to you? Or how did you find them?
I actually found them by interviewing a lot of different people over the last 3 to 5 years before I left. And many advisors will sit down and interview you. And what I wanted was a teacher. And I picked someone that I thought he would be a good teacher to me. And he had a big resource for questions that if he didn't know the exact answer, he had someone in his firm that did. Many of the people said they were teachers. They said it verbally to me, but as I talked to them, I realized that they weren't asking me questions about things that I had, and they weren't common things. So that's not a teacher to me. A teacher can learn from me as much as I learn from them, and we share information, and I should very well understand where I'm rolling my money over.
Right.
Not just say they're really smart and so I trust them.
Yeah, that's a big one, to be literate enough to be able to ask questions and get, you should understand where your investments are and why. There's so many questions that people, I think, don't ask, and they just, like you say, just similar to healthcare. People don't ask a lot of questions. They don't advocate for themselves. They just sort of go with what the doctor says. And sometimes we need other opinions, or, so I think that's great for people to know that this is about education. This isn't about getting somebody to do a job you don't know how to do for you. This is about that, and also having them teach you. That's a great point. So, yeah, and as you're talking, I'm thinking it's so interesting because, as the CFO of your household, which is run similarly to a business, really, there's, there are a lot of the decisions that you're making are very similar. You really kind of need a financial team, which is what you're talking about. Trying to do that all on your own might sound, I think the main reason people want to do it is because they think it's going to be cheaper. They're saving in fees and things like that. But in the long run, you may easily be losing out. So, yeah, I wanted to refer back to something else that you brought up, which is feeling stuck, feeling kind of, held hostage around money. I don't think that was the term that you used, but we were talking about that, and that's a terrible feeling, really. How do you help people with that, or what do you have to say to people who do feel that way?
I think right now, especially with inflation, a lot of people feel stuck, especially if you're raising a family right now and your kids need things for school. We're a culture that we eat out a lot, and we've just become accustomed to it. Our favorite restaurants have went up in price, and some of them still aren't making the money that we think they're making because all of the goods have went up in costs. So there's many people stuck, and I lead that back to it's a paycheck to paycheck mentality. And there's many people, even with 6-figure incomes, that are one paycheck away from a bankruptcy. Mm-hmm. So the stress that you put on yourself because of that, knowing that you have to be at work, you have to go there because you have payments that are going to be due. I call that an invisible noose around the neck. Mm. And that invisible noose is bad, and it always puts a little chokehold on you. I worked with many physicians that they had lots of nice toys that their families enjoyed.
Right.
But they were working all the time and giving up their health right. to pay for all those trinkets. And sometimes you just have to decide, do I want a little bit of peace with a capital P, mm-hmm. or do I want to keep in this rat race? Because there's so many people that we're jealous of because we look at their manicured lawn, mm-hmm. and we look at their 2 cars and their beautiful 2-story house, but they shut the door and there's a lot of fighting going on and a lot of stress that you wouldn't take if you knew it.
Yeah.
And so that invisible noose is what I'm looking for us to say, I did this too. I know how you feel, and it's so stressful, and we want to let that noose go and hopefully then slip it over the head, mm-hmm. and just get rid of it. But part of it has to be with, we're not going to try to keep up with this facade that we see it's a payment system. It's a house of cards just ready to topple.
Yeah, that is so good for people to hear, because I think more people are walking around feeling that invisible noose than not, actually. And, some of it is kind of self-inflicted. I mean, we do. And there's kind of this sense, I think, you go to college and you get these good jobs and you work your way up, and there's almost a sense of, well, I should be able to buy all these things. I mean, other people mm-hmm. who are in my profession buy them. And, so again, there's this sort of straying away from the reality of your numbers and what you're doing with them. And sort of going into la la land where but I should be able to go out to dinner every night. I don't belong to the country club, so I should be able to eat out every night. I mean, it's really interesting how we think about it. And And I don't think it's not a bad thing. It's just interesting. It's just like, get curious about what you're doing and why you're doing it. I think that's the first step. And I think people sort of just feel shame. So anytime we feel shame, we just kind of want to run away from whatever the topic is. But it really is more, I think, of something where if we can get curious, we can get into action in new ways. And I think that's, another big thing that you're helping people to do. So back to your book. Did we cover the 4 foundational pieces? I feel like I took us off track with one of them.
I think the last piece we didn't cover is that plugging away in retirement as early as possible, but never thinking that it's too late to plug into retirement. Don't ever think it's too late, because anything that you can save, you might need it. You might not need it right initially when you retire, and it has time to grow and give you a little bit of cushion later on. So plug away at that retirement. The earlier you do it, so many people, when they're younger, they think, who cares about retirement? I don't even know if I'll even make it there. And I'm not sure Social Security will be there. Well, I think some form of Social Security will be there. And you can't put that off, because when you get to retirement, many people have not physically taken good care of themselves. They're more tired. They can't work like they used to. They can't hold a second job or work in retirement, and they need the money. That's when you really need the money.
Yeah. Yeah, such a great point. And for younger people out there, or for those of you who have kids in their 20s, I mean, I could have done so much better myself, but I was one of those people who thought, it felt like 40 was a million years away, and who could even, bother to think about that. But it's so easy if you do it young. I mean, if you just start with just a little bit, every month, it's just crazy how little impact it's going to have on your life, really. But I love that you said that, though, because I do have older friends who've had whatever setbacks people have throughout life. I mean, you live long enough, you're going to have setbacks, and now feel very defeated that they don't have enough for retirement. And in that feeling, this is where the emotional piece comes in, because they just sort of get sad and depressed. And they don't take action. They feel sort of paralyzed, and why bother? And they're, again, losing time. And so to not get sucked up into that emotion of it, and to just start taking whatever steps you can take. I love that you said that. So there is still hope for people.
That's right.
And the good news is that if you're healthy, there are more things people can do in their older years now with technology and everything else. You can sit in your house and maybe make some money in a variety of ways, or get out of your house. But still, there are more ways to add some extra income as well. So, it's not doomed. So let's talk for a minute, though, about emergency funds, because it's always been something that we've all talked about. We've all sort of known the rules out there. But when things are good, it doesn't feel so much like an emergency is going to be something we need to save for. Then COVID came along, and all of a sudden we're all wishing we had that big emergency fund. What do you say to people? Because this is another one where people feel like, I just don't have anything extra to be able to do that. So
I think one thing, when people start an emergency fund, and whether that means that you just find everything in your house that you can sell. And you might be surprised, just having a garage sale, or when I get a tax refund, I'm going to start that, or I get just a little bonus at work, instead of saying, hey, this is our summer vacation money, you just start your emergency fund, and that thing will grow. Now, a new couch is not an emergency, okay? Even if your old couch has a spring pushing through, you duct tape that baby in there, because that's not an emergency. And when you have that piece that it brings to a woman is just irreplaceable. Just knowing that I have $1,000 to $2,000 is what we say, $2,000 for a family to start off with, but just let that grow to 3 to 6 months of living expenses, so that if somebody did lose their job, if a child God forbid, got sick and you had to take time off, you can get FMLA, but it doesn't always pay you the whole time that you're off.
Right.
You have a baby and you wanted to stay home or need to stay home longer than you thought. Then you've got this emergency fund, which it just brings great peace to the female of the household usually. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think once you start to get a taste of that too, of not being stressed around money and starting to feel calmer, you want more of that. I mean, it's very motivating to get to that place where, wow, I saved a little and I can breathe a little. I think that's why I think it's important to have the new beliefs, but I think it's equally important to take some of these actions and start seeing that reinforce this idea that you might be striving for. So, and in terms of emergency funds, there are a lot of people who might be thinking, well, 2000 isn't going to get me through a job loss, So what are some of the other, goals that you would talk about with people?
In developing an emergency fund?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Should it be 1 to 3 to 6 months of, monthly income?
3 to 6 months is great to shoot for, but a lot of people have none. There is a large percentage of people that couldn't cover a $2,000 emergency. Right. And a lot of times when the air conditioning, the heater, your furnace breaks down or major car repair, we're pushing $2,000. And so then that ends up going on a credit card. So when you get the $1,000 to $2,000, however you get it, get that in there and then skip some things, cut down on some things, free up some money to build that emergency fund up so that if you were to lose your job, that you would have a backup plan. And I mean, it just brings great peace to you. There's different ways to do it, but I would say get started and then the ideas will come to you. I know I'm getting $2,000 back from my taxes. Instead of blowing that, because we deserve to blow it, I believe you, we do. Instead of doing that, though, I'm going to add that to my emergency fund, and that thing will grow. You won't believe it. And I firmly believe this. No matter what belief you're from, that there's hope out there. And that's what I'm really trying to give people, is that there is hope. But I believe that when you're a good steward of your money and you learn to be a good steward, you get blessed. And what I've seen by a lot of people that decided they were really going to get out of debt is that they got these unexpected raises, an unexpected bigger tax return than they thought, a little inheritance or something. And so then they were able to do what they were doing even faster. So don't think of anything as a bonus unless you're thinking of it as a bonus to get you out of debt and to loosen the noose around your neck so you can enjoy life.
Yeah. And I love that as a goal. I think, and I love what you just said, because I have found that too. You start focusing on, okay, I want to build this emergency fund, and things happen. And I find that in every area. And it's just it's a really exciting thing to be constantly have your radar up, be kind of on the lookout for where, could I add more into this? And like you said, things just start showing up. And I think that's a wonderful exercise for people to try. And whether you believe it or not, just try it, because it's just like that car that you never saw before on the road, and then you buy it, and then suddenly there's a million of them. And, it's just sort of what you're looking for, what your focus is. That was a great example of what can happen. Wow, money. So many things to talk about, right? Is there anything you'd like that we haven't covered that you want to kind of make sure people hear from you before we wrap up here?
I would say this. One thing when we're talking about that emergency fund is it seems like when you don't have any money, you have a ton of emergencies. Yes. But when you have that emergency fund, you have time to take a breath and think for a minute. When my air conditioner goes out, and maybe it's actually fall, and I'm like, okay, we can wait until next spring for this. There's something going on that there's going to be a special, and I know this place runs a special. You have time when the car breaks down to think for a minute and not just drag it to the first place and take the first quote that you get on how to fix it. There's just time to think, which saves you money in the end. And that's what I love about just having the peace and time to think about things because, our world, we're bombarded with everything. There's so much right on our phone that's right in our hand. We have access to everything. It's system overload all the time. But when you have that emergency fund, it just gives you a minute to take a deep breath and think about what you're going to do when the next emergency comes. And they all come for all of us at different times. But I love it when people say, I am not having emergencies now that I have that fund. They're just not as costly as they used to be. We're not desperate.
Wow. That was a beautiful place to end. And so, the worst mistakes I've made with money have been reactive. They've been in the moment, a freak out over something and kind of a rash move with money. Yeah. And so to your point, if you can avoid that and you cannot be just overreacting, but thinking through and making a conscious decision about what you want to do, that's a whole different, you'll feel totally differently about money in doing that. Right. So thank you. And to let us know where people can buy your book.
You could get it on Amazon. You can get everything on Amazon. So it's titled Girls Just Want to Have Funds. And I'm right on the cover of it. There I am. Because somebody else released a book in January with the same title. So what do you know about that?
Wow.
But mine came out in May. And, by buying that book, you could be helping someone because my book is so simple. It's like us sitting here talking right now. And so by buying the book, you could help somebody younger than yourself. I've had people that are retired that said they got great help from it. And then it also helps fund me so I can get out on social media, which costs money, and get the word out to help younger versions of myself if they want the help, if they want to accept the help and not to go through the same mistakes that many other people have.
Yeah, thank you so much. And what are some of your social media places where people can find you?
Instagram, Facebook. I'm author Monica Allen on most of it.
Okay.
And I try to stay active. You know how that is. It's hectic at times, but I'm trying to stay active. And I still got my hand in medicine and mental health part-time. So this is my passion, though. It was my life, and now it's becoming my purpose. So I'm just trying to get the word out there and help as many people as I can.
Oh, I love that. And you're a great example of what people can do after a 30-year career. So, yeah, boy, I'd love to do a whole other show just on mental health. And of course, money is impacts your mental health as well. So, yes. Well, Monica, thank you so much for being here. It was an absolute pleasure to have you. I hope everyone will read your book. I'll make sure to put the link in the show notes. And good luck with everything. And yeah, again, it was a pleasure, and I appreciate you taking your time to be here.
Thanks for having me, Michelle.
Yeah, great. So, and thank you, listeners. I hope you got a lot out of that. I hope you will look into Monica Allen's book, Girls Just Want to Have Funds, and share it with people. Like she was saying, we don't talk about money enough. It's a great book to do a little a book club with and share ideas. The more we share about money, the more comfortable we get with it too. And so thank you for being here, watching and listening to the Money and You Show. Very much appreciate that as well. You can find us on all the podcast platforms as well as Roku and the Limit Free Life YouTube channel. We're broadcast through ubngo.com in Burbank, California. We appreciate them very much. So thank you, and we'll see you next week.